Just give Sam the opportunity to answer, bro.
Yeah, I'm going to, but I'm reframing the question, and you're really not helping right now. So the Bahamian funds.
Just give Sam the opportunity to answer, bro.
You're saying are separate. I'm going to, but I'm reframing the question, and you citizens funds and actually allow citizens to withdraw funds.
Hi.
In which incident?
Oh, I just wanted
the incident in which you're referring to Tiffany Fong.
That was a separate thing where we briefly had withdrawals open for some Bahamian residents on the exchange. That is something that I think was, for a day or so before abuse of that forced us to turn it off, and is a completely, that was prior to Chapter 11. That was prior to any filings. That was when I was CEO unambiguously of all of FTX, and was unrelated to the other incidents that have been referenced in filings and other things.
Okay, so we have Tiffany Fong here as well. Was that your understanding of the conversation?
Yes, that was a separate question. It was not regarding the hack. That was about the reopening of Bahamian withdrawals. So I just wanted to clarify that. That was not in reference to the hack.
Guys, do you mind if I go back to just the beginning? Just say on the exchange there were spot positions and there were margin positions. At that point, the exchange ran completely out of funds. What happened to the that had spot positions on the exchange? Because they shouldn't have been leveraged, right?
So there are a few answers to that. The first is that there were a number of withdrawals that did happen on the exchange. It is not the case that all of the funds were not available. I think we processed, I want to say something like $6 billion of withdrawals over a few day period, and so part of the answer to that question is that they were a lot of those withdrawals were processed prior to reaching the peak of the liquidity crisis and prior to withdrawals being effectively halted. There are I think a bunch of other things going on as well there. Some of which I'm still digging into, some of which I'm still piecing together. But yeah.
But Sam, let me just ask you a very simple question. If I'm a user of FTX, I deposited 1 Bitcoin into FTX on spot. I'm not a leverage trader. I just day to day use the leverage exchange. I'm just trying to understand where my Bitcoin is today. Just a little bit of clarity of was that Bitcoin notional Bitcoin on the exchange, but the money sitting on Alameda? Was my Bitcoin used as somebody else's collateral without my permission? I think let's separate the discussion between spot and futures. On futures, I understand that there could have been potentially maybe a margin mismatch, and I hear you, and I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt because I think we had some good interactions, and I don't believe that you're an evil person. But I'm just wondering about the spot exchange, and that's people that didn't give anybody permission to use their money, but that money is no longer there anymore, right? So I'm just wondering what that money could be.
Right. So, one piece of this is that in those few days following the collapse, we processed about $6 billion of withdrawals, and those withdrawals in general were from a variety of sources, including some of those coming from futures position, from margin positions that were open, and that meant that that there was not a clear that effectively, I think, broke down some of that distinction between the two sources. Again, I'm trying to I'm trying to piece together all of what happened, and I don't have access to to put all of it together right now. But my best guess is that was at least a significant part of it.
So the hot wallets between futures and spot were co-mingled.
Why are we just allowing?
Yeah, so it sounds to me like
between futures and spot, those were co-mingled, right?
That's right. Yeah, in general, balances were treated as effectively fungible with each other.
Okay, no, wait. I just want to with that in mind, I just want to try and understand something. So I put money I want to deposit money into FTX. I deposit money into Silvergate Bank, which is United States Bank. I put the money into the bank. That money lands up in Alameda's bank account, right? So now you've got, let's say I take $100, I deposit $100 into FTX, but what I actually do is I'm depositing into Silvergate's account on Alameda, and the account name is Alameda. So now Alameda has $100 of my money. And then I want to buy a Bitcoin let's say I put $20,000 in and I want to buy a full Bitcoin. The money is, tell me where the money is sitting now, though, because this is the part that I'm confused about.
Yeah, I'm not surprised you're confused because it's confusing, and it confused me, and there were a lot of poor decisions made there, on our part. My understanding, and again, I'm not 100% confident in all of this. I am still trying to piece together all of this, again, without access to data in retrospect. But my general understanding is that, and here you're referring, I think, to the, especially the sort of 2019, 2020 era, where there were no FTX bank accounts, but where some customers were wiring straight to Alameda Research. I'm
trying to work out if the money ever left Alameda and was stored in a custodian somewhere else, which really represented a balance on the exchange, or whether there was a money deposited into Alameda, which we'll talk about in a second, and then you just gave me a notional balance on FTX, which was just a digital number on a screen, and you let me use that money to trade potentially notional Bitcoin, because actually I didn't have physical balance on the exchange because the money was sitting in an Alameda account. That's the part that I'm trying to understand.
Right.
Because that would make sense as to why Alameda had so much money to invest in projects and FTX didn't have any money to pay out to customers, right?
Yeah, so I believe that was part of the story. And again, I'm not 100% confident. I'm working with what I have here, but I believe that what you said is effectively part of what happened. I'll give one caveat to it, which is that I believe there was a ledger transfer away, it wasn't just a pure crediting of the customer on FTX. There was a transfer from one account to another, but that debit didn't clearly show up as a debit on Alameda's main account, and so did not clearly, add on the dashboard to the risk of Alameda's position, which is one of the things that led to me being surprised by the size of the position.
Because that makes sense as to why there were no more Bitcoin to withdraw, where customers like that I know had Bitcoin balances, because those Bitcoin actually didn't exist because it was just notional. You were just letting us buy notional tokens that didn't actually really exist.
Or another way of phrasing that.
Because otherwise you would have had to have the USDC somewhere.
Right. Yeah. I believe that what you're saying is in fact part of what happened.
Chet, do you want to continue with your questions, man?
Yes, so just to continue here, so when you're saying, I do want to go back to those funds that you moved to the Bahamian citizens. When you moved them, you were already aware of the issues of liquidity, correct?
So when you say move them, this was a question of which withdrawals in which jurisdictions were open when. There were other jurisdictions where withdrawals were open as well. It was not a single shut off on all process. But yeah, there were liquidity issues creeping up, and we had a staggered shut off effectively of withdrawals. There was not large size for what it's worth that went out there. Nearly the entirety of the withdrawals that we processed, I want to say something like 95%. I think more than 95% of the withdrawals were all done prior to any shutdowns, but there was a little bit left that came out from some jurisdictions, the Bahamas being one, Japan being another, given that Japan has segregated assets, and there may have been one or two other jurisdictions as well.
Why did you allude to saying that you moved those funds to appease Bahamian authorities by ensuring that Bahamian citizens wouldn't be angry at you for losing their funds, specifically in this context?
So I wouldn't say I moved them. I mean, it's a question of whether to close withdrawals, and it was accounts choosing whether or not to initiate withdrawals. I wasn't initiating them, but yeah, that was one of the jurisdictions that we were last to turn off withdrawals in. That is correct, and it felt appropriate given that that was where our primary regulator was. That's where our headquarters was. And but after about a day of that, we started to see some signs of people trying to abuse it, and we shut it down.
Sam, just a question. You guys were.
I dropped out. Go ahead, chat.
Sam, you claimed that FTX US and FTX Japan are entirely solvent and also entirely separate from the rest of your companies, correct? I think everyone would be interested to hear why you filed for bankruptcy for both of those, not just FTX US, but FTX and Japan. Why do you make that decision, regardless of the time that you made it? If you knew these were entirely solvent, why wouldn't you have argued to keep them out of the Chapter 11?
I argued for quite a while to keep them out. In the end, I was informed in a way which I no longer believe was true, that this filing would not mean that withdrawals would be shut off there, that this did not mean a bankruptcy filing, that it was just a provisional step, but that appropriate and responsible steps would be taken in those jurisdictions. I am surprised at what happened after my filing. I don't know why that's what happened, and I regret it.
Okay, and just to go a little bit further there, so you specifically though didn't file FTX Digital Markets, right? FTX Express Pray and at least two other entities in the Chapter 11.
Right.
If you were able to choose not to file those, how come you couldn't for the U.S. and Japan corporations?
I wish I hadn't. I wish that I had done what you're saying.
I'm not asking what you wish you could have done. I'm asking why you didn't.
The reason that I didn't file those in particular was those were entities where local regulators prior to my filing had already stepped in and initiated their own processes. And so I couldn't have, even if I had wanted to, for those entities.
And that includes FTX Australia?
Yes.
You also said that 8 minutes after you filed the initial motion for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, $4 billion more of liquidity basically was called in. Someone said that they could give you that cash injection. Is that correct?
I don't dispute that I've said something like that.
But did you actually get the liquidity of $4 billion offered to you 8 minutes after you filed the Chapter 11? So that would have been 4:38 in the morning. Did you get that actually offered to you?
Yes.
By whom? Can you state?
I cannot.
Okay. Why haven't you filed a motion to voluntarily dismiss the bankruptcy cases under U.S. Bankruptcy Code Section 1112 if you believed that you could save the company through that cash injection, and you also thought that FTX US and FTX Japan were fully solvent?
Was it Mr. Wonderful?
I acknowledge your question. I want to make sure that I operate in a responsible and compliant manner here. I would be discussing what would or would not be appropriate with counsel, and at the end of the day, I think that the right parties to be filing here would not be. I think that the right parties would be regulators, administrators who are overseeing this internationally, who have been leading the charge. But I acknowledge your question there.
Okay, so you're saying essentially that's a non-answer, right? Like, because you didn't say why you haven't filed that motion. You just said you would talk with counselors about that. What counselors, who are you paying? Like what does it cost you right now for counsel, and how are you affording that? Given you said that you were essentially cash poor, although you said you also had potentially up to $100,000 left.
That's something I'm trying to figure out right now.
So you have them on retainer without actual payment?
I can't go into the details. There are also potentially various relevant D&O policies which are being examined as well. But frankly, that is a concern for me. Okay.
And what funds were lost in the hack, and from what entities that you're aware of?
I don't know the details of that. That happened after the Chapter 11 team. But I think to my knowledge, this sort of on-chain analytics, as long as you don't count as long as you make sure to distinguish between the various custodial processes that were taken, then to my knowledge, have done a decent job of tracking what that was, but I don't know a ton more than that.
Okay, but you said that FTX US lost $250 million in the hack. That was a statement from you. Correct?
When did I say that?
You said that in the past few days, literally. So if you said that FTX lost $250 million in the hack, where are you getting that information from?
So I would be surprised if I'd said that it had done that. I think I wouldn't be surprised if I'd speculated that maybe the notional of it was something kind of similar to that based on what had happened on chain, but I don't think I know exactly how much it was or from exactly what entity.
Okay, but if you're assuming that much, and Arkham Intelligence also reported that around $204 million of funds were moved off of that U.S. exchange to Alameda just a few days prior to the bankruptcy. Does that mean there's a plausibility of a $500 million hole at FTX or at US, or does that mean there's just a plausibility of a $250,000 hole?
So I will make a few notes. This is all as of when I had last looked into it, and my data is somewhat stale here, so I'm just guessing as best I can. First of all, the funds moved off. There are also funds moved on. There were a lot of deposits and withdrawals on FTX US from many customers, including Alameda, but those were fully solvent accounts, and to my knowledge, all of the customers ended positive on FTX US, such that there was no hole created by any of that activity. There's not an equivalent of what happened on the international exchange, so that part would not contribute to it. In terms of the hack, I don't know how much that came from FTX US. I might be knowable from looking at on-chain activity. I had believed FTX.
I've lost his audio. Is it just
yeah, no, it's me too.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, you're back. Sorry,
Sam, we
Sam,
just lost you there for about. We lost you there for about 10 seconds.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry, I'm back. But I had and basically to my knowledge, I think that there were substantial surpluses there, such that I think it would still be, to my knowledge, solvent. Although again, I don't have access to current data.
Okay. All right. And
hold on that point regarding the US customers. So I know Altcoin Psycho pinned a tweet, and I know many people that are in very similar positions. He says, what about the thousands of customers who did an ACH withdrawal pre-bankruptcy announcement and never received their money in their bank? Surely if FTX US was fully solvent, the bank account used to process the ACH withdrawals should have continued processing.
Are these ones that were processed shortly prior to that, or that were processed that were in
before? Yeah, just shortly prior to the announcement, there were a whole lot of customer withdrawals, and those just stopped being paid.
So I can't speak to the actions taken by people who are running that business right now, or what decisions they are or aren't making. Just my belief that there would exist the funds to pay out to customers were that to be the chosen pathway. But I can't speak to which decisions are being made about whether or not to choose that pathway.
But some of these were done days before. Some of these were actually done days before.
I mean, I don't know the details of individual transfers. ACH transfers can take a week to clear sometimes. But again, I don't have access to look into individual ones.
I mean, they can take a week to clear. I agree with you that they can take a week to clear. That's not a problem. But once they are in the system, it's just a case of clearing. It's not a case. It's if the transaction's in the system.
That's how chargebacks work.
From a solvent entity. From a solvent entity.
There were lots of customers charging back to FTX US every day, attempting to ACH in and then retroactively cancel those. Those were solvent customers, although dicks. I don't know the details of this system, but in general, U.S. fiat transfers are quite messy, and for both ACH and credit card related transfers, it is very difficult to have confidence in a transfer until as long as a month after it's been initiated. So that is a mess.
Sam, can I ask you a question? And I don't want to interrogate you and ask you specific questions, but try to understand 29-year-old dealing with the collapse of an empire, which affected probably in excess of 10, 20, 30, maybe even 40 million people and a whole industry around it.
I wish we had that many
knocking
customers.
Off billions.
But
Okay, but
still
I mean,
millions.
your customers, etc. But okay, millions of customers. Trying to understand, as a 29-year-old, who was around you? Who were the 5 people that you were calling and speaking to? And I'm trying to get a feel for the type of discussions that were happening as this whole thing started to collapse. Trying to get a feel for what were the top 5 numbers that you were calling, and I'm trying to get a feel for what they were telling you to do.
So it's a good question, and there was a crew of employees working around me to try to do what we could. I was calling a number of prospective funders to investigate potential opportunities to.
But who were your confidants? Who were the people that were guiding you? Like, I know when something happens to me, I've got 5 people in the office who are really close to me, and I know who they are, and they're partners, and they know that they're brothers for life. Who were you phoning? Were you phoning Caroline? Were you speaking to Gary?
Gary and Gary being a childhood friend and a co-founder as well.
Yeah.
Sam, I'd love to know more about his involvement.
So I mean, I was calling basically, calling and or speaking to in person. Primarily other core employees of the company, other employees who had relevant stakes in it, who had relevant thoughts. But it was as the core employees were the bulk of who I was counseling with. Then I did call some external advisors, a few key investors. I called a few.
What about Caroline? What about Caroline? Were you speaking to Caroline during this whole thing? I mean, were you guys aligning on exactly how much money Alameda had and what the value of the positions was? Because ultimately, she was a CEO. I mean, how many times where was she on the list? In terms of frequency, was she number 1? Was she number 3? Was she number 5?
She was not physically in the same place as me when this is happening, so there were a fair number of phone calls to do exactly what you said. Like, as soon as this happened, one of the first things that we said was, we need to know exactly what the deal is with not just Alameda's balances and positions on FTX, but everywhere. We want to know exactly what funds there are. We want to know whether margin call will be able to be hit. We want to know how long it would take to deliver those. And so there were certainly a lot of conversations with her around that. Although she wasn't physically in the Bahamas when this is happening, and so I was speaking more frequently in some sense to the employees who were there.
What about Dan Friedberg?
I don't want to, I think, go into where specific employees' heads were at, just because I think that's for them to talk about it if they want to.
But was he one of the top 5, or was he one of the top 5 people that you were? I mean, he was a big advisor, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a big employee of the company, a big part of our legal team. I think that everyone sort of in those positions were people I was trying to consult with, and I don't want to sort of go into details of where they were at unless they kind of give me permission to do so. But you can look through who were the core developers, the core people on the legal side, the core people on the ventures M&A side, and on customer support, VIP support. Like, all of those people were sort of huddling around to some extent, and trying to figure out like what the right things to do were. But at the same time, I was not as communicative to some of those as I wished that I had been. I was including some people on that list. And I think in retrospect, that was a failing of mine as well. I was very nervous to say something company-wide that, both because I wanted to make sure I didn't say something that I didn't believe, and I wasn't sure what was happening. Like, I was trying to figure it out in real time, but also because at some point, everything that I said started leaking out pretty quickly. And so it sort of broke down the ability to have that much of a distinction between company-wide communications and public communications. But I think in retrospect, I wish that I'd just been, saying what I knew when I knew it pretty transparently, and accepted the fact that I was going to guess wrong sometimes, and the fact that a lot of it was going to get out publicly, because I think I owed it to the employees who had been fighting with us for years to tell them what I knew when I knew it, even if I wasn't confident in it.
Chet, I'll let you continue with the questions.
Yes. So Reuters reported $10 billion in funds. We really need to get back to this point. The $10 billion in funds were transferred without FTX customer knowledge to Alameda from FTX. Ellison herself said this in a statement, right? So is it true, or that you or the team had management as of the controlling owner, right there, move these funds regardless of method from FTX to Alameda?
So, I do think that there was, Alameda ended up with a substantial margin position open on the exchange. I think that just the over collateralized margin position was a fair bit of it. I think that the avenue that Rand talked about with the historical wire transfers was part of it as well. I think you add those up, and I think you probably get to most of it. Although again, I don't have all the data right now, so that's sort of piecing it together. And a lot of these
where did the funds come from that Alameda was able to margin?
Sorry, that when we say that they're able to margin.
Yes, because that margin is a loan, effectively, correct? Yep. Alameda. Where did the funds come from for that loan?
They were, and the collateral came from assets that Alameda owned, and the liabilities were, a short margin position open on FTX, coming from the assets that FTX had.
And how did you know this much about this move, even though you said you didn't know there was that much on the sheets?
Oh, a lot of these are things that I have pieced together after the fact that I did not know at the time, or was not fully aware of at the time. This is sort of a hodgepodge of things that I knew, things that I didn't know but have since found out, and things that I'm guessing at given what I've been able to find out, but I'm not entirely confident in.
Were FTX consumers made aware of this?
But Sam.
Yep.
Just before, I want to go on that specific point. Alameda. Is it possible that Alameda was withdrawing real dollars from FTX and instead putting FTT as collateral? So almost taking FTT, putting it as collateral, and then withdrawing real dollars in the exchange as against that FTT collateral?
Yeah, a lot of clients were doing that. I do believe Alameda was doing that as well, and was doing that for a substantial size.
Yeah, the size that I saw was more than they were supposed to have as unlocked tokens. Do you think it's possible that maybe they were leveraging more tokens than they had unlocked?
I don't believe it's more than were unlocked, because all FTT tokens are unlocked at this point. There are separately, so I think that what CoinGecko and CoinMarketCap sort of denoted as circulating tokens, I believe that was effectively not counting FTT tokens held on FTX. I think that's roughly how it was implemented, that it was because it's just done by looking at a set of blockchain addresses, and we're basically taking all tokens except for those on some specific subset of blockchain addresses. And I think what that was doing was just excluding at least some, if not all, of FTX's wallets from that calculation, and probably had been for a little while. So I think that the circulating supply calculations on CoinMarket and CoinGecko were, they're displaying a particular thing. I don't think that thing was necessarily what was the most intuitive thing, but all FTT had been unlocked for a little while.
Thanks, man.
And you stated in your text, leaked on Vox, that you knew deposits from FTX consumers were essentially lent out to Alameda, and that Alameda then invested with these funds, correct?
Something roughly like that.
Okay, and so you then would have had to been aware of that happening. In that report, now by Reuters, we referred to back, it also stated that up to $2 billion of those funds are now missing. When Reuters asked you about this, no clarity was given. In fact, you responded with 3 question marks. So I'm asking you in front of our audience here, the live crypto audience here, where did that $2 billion go?
I'm so confused. So first of all, I didn't say knew as of when that was happening. It's not clear to me what you were saying there in terms of when I knew that. But
I'm not sure that I asked you a question, Sam. Can we just stick on that? I'm trying to keep this to where we can keep it very cordial and really inform the audience. So, in that report, it said $2 billion of those funds are now missing, right? From the 10 billion, they're released up to 2 billion, at least 1 to 2 billion gone from the balance sheet, disappeared. No one knows where they're at. Where did that $2 billion go?
I have no idea what that's referring to.
Okay. So you had no oversight of that much money being able to just disappear from one of your firms?
Wait, I'm not sure. Sorry. I'm not sure I'm even agreeing that that is what happened. I'm confused by that statement.
There's a report from Reuters that says that up to $2 billion of the $10 billion that was moved, that you just said you knew was moved.
Which $10 billion that was moved?
The $10 billion that was moved to FTX without customer knowledge from Alameda to FTX. The $10 billion that we were just talking about, that you just said that you knew we were talking about. I don't understand the confusion.
I'm not sure about a 10 billion number. Sorry, if you could point me to this article, I think it would help.
Yes, anyone feel free to pin that Reuters article to the top of the space. So, all right. So we'll move past that for right now, and I'll go back to that in a second. In October 2021, you conducted a raise for FTX, correct?
I mean, there are raises over the course of 2021, yeah.
Okay, but you did a specific raise with Sequoia and some others. 69 investors to be precise, including Sequoia, which called it a meme round. How much was that raised for?
I don't remember how much that round was. Was that the 400 million round, roughly?
Yeah, $420 at $420.69 million.
Right.
Raised from 69 investors, which is quite called a meme round. What were those funds used for?
Acquisitions.
Did you take any of that money?
Who is you here? Is you
SBF, Sam, the person I'm talking to? Did you take any of that money?
To my knowledge, that was used for acquisitions for FTX.
According to FTX financial records, internal records reviewed by the Wall Street Journal, actually 3/4 of that raise, $300 million, went directly to you from you selling some of your stake in the company. Where did that $300 million go?
Oh, sorry. The particular $300 million from the resale, that I'm not sure that's that same round that you're talking about. I think that it may have been that one. My memory is it was a different one, but you might be right. But either way, that was or slightly before that, I had bought Binance out of their stake in FTX for a few $1 billion. And then had resold a small portion of that secondary to investors. So it went to recouping the costs from buying Binance out.
Okay, and you said you didn't conduct any risk management at FTX and Alameda in all essence. When you and you said this in the New York Times Dealbook Summit yesterday, correct?
I may said I did I don't remember exactly how I phrased it, but I did way less than I should have.
You said essentially there was none. When you pitched your firms to accredited U.S. investors, did you tell them there was no risk management in place?
So there was some risk management in place. I myself did very little there. I wish that I had done way more, and I myself did very little in terms of appointing anyone to do it. Now, there was a lot of risk management that was in place in terms of automated, risk management systems, but there was not, in retrospect, good oversight of this. That was a big mistake. I don't believe that I made any material misstatements to prospective investors, although obviously I can't, I don't have recollection of everything that I said. Everything that I said,
what did you present to them as the risk management profile of FTX when you pitched to them?
I don't remember.
Was that part of it?
I don't remember detailed conversations about it. I'm not sure there weren't. There were a lot of conversations that happened. I'm not sure there weren't, but I don't particularly remember many.
So there weren't a lot of due diligence processes that took place?
And I think that there were due diligence on some things. I think there's a lot of due diligence done on.
You got a call. That's why that cut out.
I think we lost Sam again.
Yeah, sorry, I'm back.
You're back. You dropped out 5 seconds. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Continue,
Sam. My sense is, and I don't want to put words in other people's mouths, but my sense is roughly that when people were doing their diligence here, That prospective investors were thinking of it primarily from the perspective here. They were looking at the upside here. They were looking at, what could the business become? How could it grow? That's what you generally do as a venture investor. And if you are, primarily concerned about, the downside of venture investment, that probably means it's an investment that you don't want to make and aren't going to bother investigating in the first place.
So, so the point that you're making is that they didn't need to look into the risk management profile?
I'm not necessarily saying they didn't need. I mean, I don't want to make a statement about what they needed to or didn't need to do, but I think from their perspective, that they saw themselves as, I would guess, as primarily looking into what is the upside of this business, and.
Okay. And did I lose you there?
Yeah, sorry, but
it stops.
But at the end of the day, like, okay. Obviously, I don't want to talk for them. Like, they should talk for themselves.
Okay. And did you ever update your investors on the status of your risk management profile?
I don't remember having like a specific, update specifically related to that. I don't remember everything that's been said, but I'm not sure exactly what you're getting at there, or if you're asking, like, did I have a special session where, called like update of risk management? Like, no.
Did you have any regular meetings with your investors?
Yeah, we would have a call every few months to talk about the business.
Okay, and the ways that you were controlling customer assets or anything like that just didn't come up, is what you're saying?
I don't think it particularly did.
Okay, so that, interesting. Now, yesterday in the New York Times Dealbook Summit, you made an interesting statement. So it kind of stuck out to me. You said you, quote, marked the assets Alameda used as collateral. How then were you not aware of the size of Alameda's FTT collateral then? And wouldn't this mean that you had access to Alameda's bookkeeping?
Sorry. You said that at the Dealbook Summit, I said...
You said that when you were asked about the marking of the assets and whether they were marked properly. Do you remember that question from Sorkin?
Vaguely, yeah.
Okay. And you responded saying that with Alameda Research, you marked those assets, and that would mean that you were the one who had determined the price of them on the book, correct?
We had algorithms which determined the price of those on the book.
Okay, so then what did you mean by you had marked the assets at Alameda?
I think I was, so I don't remember the exact phrase that I said. It may have been me just saying, like, we as in, like, FTX, the product, were marking all assets to mark prices. But I'm sorry, I actually don't remember exactly what I had said then.
Okay. But I said to you that you said that you had marked the assets. That is something that you said directly in response to his question as to whether you thought that they were marked properly. And you felt that you might not have marked them properly while you were marking them at Alameda, up against everything else. But in doing so, that would mean that, like, that is access to the books, is it not?
Sorry. So this is, to be clear, marking the assets of Alameda on FTX, right? Looking at the collateral that Alameda held.
No, this is just marking Alameda's assets. You didn't say anything about FTX specifically assets or Alameda's assets on FTX. You were specifically mentioning how much was marked as far as the collateral of Alameda.
Yeah, but I think that was implicitly the collateral that it had on FTX is my memory of what that was referring to. But I mean, either way, sorry, I can talk about what I actually think here. Which is that in general, like, FTX was marking assets to what their mark prices were, and that when I was thinking about the risk profile of large positions on FTX, and specifically of Alameda's position, which I was also surprised by the size of in retrospect, but in addition to that when I was thinking about not from a formal marking perspective, but from a just in my mind, how do I think about this? Is this something I feel nervous about? Is this something that I need to be investigating more perspective? that I was substantially underestimating what crash risk would look like, and I was thinking about a 50% haircut as a substantial, very large haircut, rather than as possibly even an underestimate of what would be necessary for a short period crash in some circumstances. So, I think it was I certainly think that I made some big mistakes there in how I was thinking about it.
Okay.
Sam, sorry, it's running again.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to. There were a couple of accusations about the way that you ran the exchange, and I really want to try and get to the bottom of it. One of the accusations was someone that went onto BitBoy show. I'm not sure if you heard the show, but he mentioned that FTX was creating more tokens than there were in circulation, or more tokens than they were given for their market making role, almost creating synthetic tokens and trading in these synthetic tokens that they never really had. And he had some really convincing evidence. He showed a little bit of like on-chain data in terms of the number of tokens that they sent to FTX versus the number of tokens in FTX and the tokens that were returned. And his accusation was that FTX was trading synthetic or fake tokens to manipulate price. Do you think that could have happened?
Sorry. So I think that I frankly don't know actually exactly what you're referring to there. I'm sorry, did not hear that particular one. I'd love to look into that more. If you could send me a link to that and get back to you on that. But an FTX.
Let me just explain it to you again. Let me just explain it to you. Like for example, when a token gets listed in exchange, sometimes the token would be required to give the exchange to lodge certain tokens with the exchange in their role as a market maker. And this specific project claimed that you were selling more tokens than you had as a market maker. And when the time came for FTX to return the tokens to the project, there weren't enough tokens. And I'm just trying to understand, do you think that it could be possible that maybe you guys created, call it fake synthetic tokens, fake tokens, that kind?
So I think you're probably talking about Alameda there, not FTX, and I don't know the details of that. I'm sorry, I wasn't running Alameda, and but I can try and look into that.
Simon, I know you had a question as well.
Okay,
Simon.
No, maybe it would be good to look at some of the key events, because obviously we've gone quite deep here into the specifics around. I think maybe some of the things leading up to what got here, starting at the Luna situation, a lot of people don't have real clarity on people's involvements in that. So one of the, Sam, it would be great to hear your perspective on, a lot of people believe that there was some efforts from people really exposed to Luna, to try and save Luna or and there was some renegs of certain agreements. My understanding was Celsius, Galaxy, Alameda. Are you, could you share with us some of any of the things that were happening between those that were significantly affected? Because obviously this is the start of the story.
So I actually know surprisingly little about the Luna side of this. I don't to my knowledge, neither FTX nor nor Alameda were particularly involved in Luna. Obviously the market crash was quite relevant for them in the industry as a whole. But I don't think that there's that much specific, if any, specific Luna involvement. I think that there were I guess I think that there were a lot of, there are obviously a lot of blowouts in borrow lending desks around then that came from sort of secondary exposure to Luna, flowing through Three Arrows and other places. But I don't know much outside of that.
Do you know anyone that made significant money from the Luna collapse? Was there a way of shorting the stable coin on using any of the products on FTX?
I think there are probably a lot of good arbitrages to do. Like, I do think that is likely the case, and I think that things are just like not trading really exactly in line for most of that period. So, yeah, I think there are really good trades to do then.
Did you have any like meetings yourself or anyone in the team you know about, like with like Alex Majinski, people from Celsius, Novogratz, or any of these people that were deeply affected by it? Was there any kind of meetings that you know about where people were trying to figure out what to do? Because there's like rumors that when Celsius decided to try and get out for some of their clients, that was like a renege of some kind of agreement, and that upset a lot of people. Do you know anything about that?
I don't. I mean, obviously I had some meetings with like borrow lending firms around that time, around the troubles they were facing, but I don't unfortunately know anything about things specific to really like the Luna side.
So I've got Simon. I've just sent you through a username. Chairman, I'll let you ask your question, man. Thanks for patiently waiting. Simon, I've sent you a username. Do you mind? Because my Spaces is glitching. Can you send them an invite up? I've just sent you the username. So to send an invite up, you got to click on the icon at the bottom, guests. Click on speakers and click on invite speakers and add the username. But Chairman, I'll let you ask your question, man.
Yeah, Sam. Would you be willing to go on Up Only, hosted by Kobe and Ledger Status?
Potentially. I suspect that I have been messaged about that. I'm sorry. I'm still digging through my my backlog of messages. But I'll try and put that on schedule.
You gotta go on it. Come on.
I've got another question for you as well, Sam. The tweet. So while Simon invites a guest to ask you a couple of questions, and I know you have to go over in about 5 to 10 minutes. There was a tweet on 11th of October. At some point, I might have more to say about particular sparring partner, so to speak. But you know glass houses. So for now, all I'll say is, well played. You won. Most will assume this refers to CZ, and would love you to elaborate on this. It's been a while since the tweet.
Yeah, it was. I mean, look, mostly I screwed up, and like I feel incredibly bad about that, and it hurt a lot of people. And whether or not it matters, I'm going to do what I can to try and make it right. And I don't want to try and deflect responsibility from that. Obviously there are other things that also contributed to what happened, and there was a pretty sustained PR assault, which I underestimated, and underestimated the impact of, and underestimated the execution of, and I think that was quite impactful, and was what sort of lit the match here, but that doesn't change the fact that I wasn't on top of my shit.
Hey Mario, since he's leaving in 5 or 10 minutes, can I ask a couple of questions?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, man. While we bring up the guest, go ahead.
Fantastic. Hey Sam, did you or any of your business entities or family members ever make any donations to political parties or politicians on the Bahamas?
I'm not sure, not to my knowledge.
You can't just say that answer that with yes or no?
I don't know of cases where we did. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily know if like someone had at some point made some donation on behalf of some entity. But like I don't know of that having happened.
Okay. Have you and your lawyers been in touch with the U.S. Department of Justice about your case?
I can't talk about, any specific communications or lack thereof with specific, regulatory agencies. But obviously we'd be, looking to engage constructively if and when that were to happen.
The reason why I'm asking is in several interviews you pointed out that FTX US has enough funds to pay US customers.
Yes.
Is that a strategy to ensure that the U.S. Department of Justice doesn't charge you with a crime because the DOJ doesn't have jurisdiction over foreign FTX customers?
I mean, it's a true fact. It's like FTX US was in fact a segregated business, and it didn't have any of the properties that led to the issues on FTX International. And so, to my knowledge, it is solvent, and that doesn't take away what happened on the international platform, but I don't know, at least it's something.
Have you transferred funds to FTX US before the bankruptcy to enable this defense strategy?
No, FTX US was, to my knowledge, always solvent.
In some of the recent interviews, you used the phrase, "I don't have the details," 116 times. Why is it that you know so little about your own companies, or even about the real estate deals that you facilitated for your parents?
So, many of these things were things where I was not the one who was primarily doing them. And then many of these things are things where there exists data that would make it entirely possible to answer these questions. But unfortunately, I don't have access to that data right now. And you could ask the Chapter 11 team to try and get access to such data that might help answer some of these questions. But I don't have that data about my the companies that I started right now.
Okay.
I see Kim, if we can give CoffeeZilla the mic after this question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead. Kim, last question. CoffeeZilla, the mic is yours.
Two more things really quick. So you keep saying that you want to help your customers getting their money back. What are the concrete steps that you are taking?
So, look, a lot of this isn't in my control right now, and a lot of this is going to be up to the global administrators and regulators who are involved. But I'm happy to be of assistance to any of them any way that I can, and in any way that they want me to be. But I would be excited to be, to the extent that I could help find help put together anyways, or be a part of that to help make make customers more whole by probably by there being more funds for them to have access to.
CoffeeZilla, the mic is yours, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. I just wanted to quickly ask, so there's this big question about this $8 billion that went into some kind of a stub account. If I just want to get some clarification on this, from my understanding, what you're basically claiming is that back when FTX didn't have banking, you'd use Silvergate to have people to wire money to Alameda Research and then credit them on the FTX side, but you didn't actually account for that money going back to them. So essentially you had like $8 billion come into FTX you didn't have on the books, technically. I mean, can you explain more how that worked? Because it seems like such a key part of this whole thing. And so far we've gotten like very vague things about stub accounts. Just try to be as specific as you can on how that actually happened.
So, and again, some of these are things I'm trying to piece together that I don't have the full answer to, but I think that part of it was, I believe that there was, correct FTX accounting, in terms of, the audited financials, but that at least I can say that when you sort of pulled up, on a dashboard, what the accounts look like, it would not have, it wouldn't have displayed, those transfers, and it wouldn't have displayed the balances related to those, which meant that it was, that the sort of what you would naively see as the relevant, it's the relevant sort of position size was quite a bit smaller than what the full position size was.
Specifically, you're talking about the funds that went into Alameda that was credited to on the customer side on FTX. Yeah, you're saying that basically when you looked at your dashboard, Alameda was using those funds to trade perhaps, but that ultimately you couldn't see that on the Alameda side because there was some kind of an accounting problem where there was a mix up with where it was credited. Is that the story?
Yeah, it's something roughly like that, or at the very least that the common displays of it did not include that piece of the accounting.
a real quick second follow-up. So I've talked to a few Alameda insiders, and I've kind of run them by your story of things. I think you probably are aware. I'm pretty skeptical. And one of them, when I told them, like, sort of like, could it be that Sam wouldn't know about this? Somebody who worked with you, and they actually, like, they laughed and they said, there's no way he's claiming to be stupid now when he was like this genius wonder kid. And so my sense of things is, how do you explain this? How do you explain the fact that some of the people who worked with you for years, your employees, have come out and said, there's no way he didn't know about these backdoors. There's no way he didn't know what Caroline was doing when you guys were very close. The offices were right next to each other. I mean, how do you expect us to believe this story you're spinning?
I mean, I don't know what to say. Like, I had a lot going on, and I was spread thin. I was a bit less grounded than I had been before, and I lost track of a lot of important things. And I mean, I think that those
hang on one second. I think spread thin is one thing, right? Like, I think, things can get out of hand, but we're talking about a fundamental understanding of whether Alameda was commingling funds with FTX. I mean, I saw your Stephanopoulos and Sorkin interview, and you're pretty categorical that you had no idea that you were mingling funds. So that's what I'm asking about, not like, did you know exactly what was happening on November 7th or 8th? I mean, I can understand sort of things getting out of control, but we're talking about the most fundamental grasp on how your business worked. You're telling us you had no idea.
I was not aware of a lot of what was going on. I was vaguely aware that some of these systems existed. I had no details of them, and I was not spending much time and on looking at position risk management. It was a big mistake.
I mean, we're
right, Sam. I've just got guys. I've just got a DM. Sam has to leave. So guys,
wait. Can I, Mark? Can I
guys? All right, guys. I just got to end it, guys. So because Sam has been DMing me nonstop about having to leave, and I don't want to just drop out for the last 10 minutes, saying I have to leave. So Sam, the last question I wanna end it with is there's two camps right now. One camp is looking at this and saying, Sam. All right. So guys. So on one side, the audience, I'm looking at the comments, is like, hey, Sam is at least speaking despite lawyers telling him not to, and looking at this in a very positive light. On the other side, people are saying your answers are very calculated, you're dodging any tricky questions, and this is all part of a plan to paint yourself in a better light. And I do have to admit, there are some answers where they're very, very calculated, and you try to dodge them in one way or another. So to conclude it from my end, what's next? What's next for you in the next few weeks? What can we expect? And what can FTX customers expect? Because you did say that FTX US, they should be made whole. FTX International, I think 30 cents on the dollar. What can the people that were hurt by this, there's some comments about people, kind of hurts me to say this, but talking about ending their life, and we've had some of these people on stage. What can they expect over the next few weeks and months? And that question is for Sam, just for all other panelists, please. Go ahead, Sam.
I mean, look, I'm incredibly sorry about what happened, and I know that doesn't change anything. I'm going to do what I can, even if that's not much. But at the end of the day, hopefully there will be pathways that will be able to get more funds back for users. Hopefully there will be pathways that open up withdrawals where they can be, and that maximize the value ultimately that users can get. But in the end, that's a lot of that's not going to be up to me. I'm just going to try and be helpful where I can there. But I'm sorry.
Sam, you keep saying you can do what you can. What you're going to do as much as you can. You said it when the liquidator, when you went into chapter 11. I'm trying to understand in your head, what do you think you can do in your current position given the fact that the liquidators on both sides, well, the liquidators on the US side have said that you're no longer involved and that you no longer speak on behalf of the company. And I genuinely believe that you really want to help. I'm just trying to understand in your head, when you talk about doing whatever you can and trying to do it, what do you think is in your hands?
I am sorry, I'm very late for next call, so I do have to hop off now. But all I can do is I can be helpful to all the teams who want me to globally, and I'm going to continue to do that if and when I'm asked, and look for other ways over time that I can hopefully help contribute. But yeah, there's a limit to how much different groups are going to want me to, and I understand that.
Mario, can we keep the space open after Sam drops?
Yeah, we will. So after just for everyone, hold on. Right. Yeah, hold on. Just want to say, because I know Sam, you're just about to jump off. He just jumped off. So we do have insiders with important. We do have insiders with bombshell news. They've been waiting. They've been investigating the matter for months. I think about 9 months, and they have a lot of findings.
All right. So he jumped out. Like I said, 20 seconds. I'll tell you what's up. Here's a recap of the whole thing. I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't know what data. I feel bad. That kind of sums it up right there. We didn't get anything. Literally, we didn't get anything of value out of that. He just admitted to the same old things that he's already admitted to anyway. So, yeah, again, like the reason why I want, if you can hear my voice, like I lost my voice going to Decentral. I am not surprised that's what it was, but I wanted to make sure that people understood that this here is going on and y'all got the scoop as far as what's actually happening. Like I said, I mean, the text that's on the screen, I mean it. Like this video, I didn't even monetize anything. I just wanted to get it out there for you guys. So appreciate y'all joining. If y'all got any questions, I know way more of this than I wish I had, because I took a hit. When FTX said they were gonna take care of BlockFi and took everybody's funds, just a good old mess is what's going on. But I'm gonna stop talking because this ain't going too far. This ain't gonna help me out too much. I will say that it didn't happen. Nobody cursed him out at the end of it before he left, at least. But I'm sure things are gonna get crazy over there. I appreciate y'all that jumped on here to have a conversation and say, hey, this is what's going on. And just, share your thoughts. Like at the end of the day, guys, it's not about Sam. Who cares about Sam? It's about making people whole. And that's the problem, right? Like people are focusing on this guy and he's getting nothing but clout. He's getting nothing but attention. And you're just a lot of times reinforcing the same reason that this happened in the first place. You're empowering somebody that thought they were on top of the world and they were untouchable. They could do whatever they want. Now the house of cards came crumbling down, but he's still on top of his world. He is, on more demand than anybody else. Like, I don't care what you think. Attention feels great. He's getting it. He is getting it. So you're awesome, Rory. I appreciate it, man. So I mean, this is going to continue to go this route where, he's going to be, Sam Bankman-Fried superstar. SBF is not going to go away. My lawyers are telling me not to talk to people. Okay, but it feels too good for me not to. That's the problem. And I'll leave you with one little piece of, just one tiny thought. I wish I had the opportunity to talk. I wish I had the opportunity to be the guy doing, I don't even want to call this an interview. I wish I had the opportunity to just say hello to Sam. Let me just say it that way. Because at the end of the day, I would ask him very, very different things than most people are asking right now. It's not about all of these details. If you keep asking him about these details, you're going to get what you got, which is absolutely nothing. You need to stop and just say, hey, Sam, how do you feel? How are you doing? And then you're going to get the truth. When you stop prying for data and start asking somebody what's actually going on in their head, you're going to get the whole can of worms that most people won't be able to get. Thank you, Turbo. You're the man, dude. I really appreciate it. But that's where I'm at with it. I have, what do I got to fill you guys in? Since I went to Decentral, I got a boatload of swag stuff that I'm going to give away to you guys. Bunch of projects that I need to review. I didn't talk about them because I wanted to meet the people and shake their hands and say hello before I did so. But I got a bunch of stuff in store, and I just need my voice to get better and come back for me to be able to actually do some of these things. So I am going to leave it here. You are fantastic. Thank you so much for joining the stream. As always, I really appreciate every single one of you. Join the Discord if you want to keep the conversation going. Hit me up on Twitter. For some reason, I've been kind of crazy on there right now. It's just a matter of staying connected and making sure that you guys are getting information from good people. And I'm not the only one out there. There's plenty of good people out there. Just make sure that you're staying informed, making good decisions in this market, because people are just out to get you. If you got money in the exchanges, get it out. Get it out. Is it financial advice? It's financial advice I'm listening to. Just be safe, guys, and be good. I appreciate all of you. Mick, good seeing you here, buddy.